The world held its collective breath as rescuers hunted for the lost Titan, a search that ultimately ended in tragedy. But did you know that two working men nearly met the same fate 50 years earlier? In August 1973, British Royal Navy submariner Roger Chapman, along with engineer Roger Mallinson, were roughly 150 miles off the coast of Ireland in the Celtic Sea. Chapman and Mallinson were at depth laying transatlantic telephone cable in a commercial submersible called Pisces 3, defined as a small underwater craft with less power than a submarine, and requiring a tow from a larger vessel to submerge and surface. At the end of their routine shift, the Pisces 3 was about to be reattached to the cables from the mothership. That's when it all went wrong. Chapman told BBC News, "There was lots of banging of ropes and shackles. That wasn't abnormal during an operation's final phase. This time, however, a part of the submersible flooded, adding weight to the craft and causing it to sink. It happened suddenly," according to Chapman. He said, "We were hurtled backward and sank rapidly. We were dangling upside down, then heaved up like a Big Dipper." By the time the two men landed, they were more than 1,500 feet underwater. Recalling their 30-second fall before settling at the bottom, Mallinson later said, "It was very frightening, like a Stuka dive bomber with screaming motors and the pressure gauges spinning around." To this day, the Pisces 3's recovery is the deepest underwater rescue in history. Luckily, Chapman and Mallinson had a fresh oxygen tank on the Pisces 3 with a 66-hour supply. Once at the bottom, the two experienced submariners knew that oxygen preservation was crucial, so they attempted to breathe as little as possible and kept talking to a minimum. They not only hit the bottom of the Celtic Sea, but sank even deeper into a gully. Fortunately, Chapman and Mallinson managed to contact the surface to let them know they were alive and that, for the moment, they were fine. Once at the bottom, Mallinson and Chapman checked for leaks and cleaned up their scattered equipment, displaced by the fall. The submersible itself had landed upside down. In an interview with BBC News, Mallinson recalled, "We hardly spoke, just grabbing each other's hand and giving it a squeeze to show we were all right. It was very cold, we were wet through, but our job was to stay alive." Chapman added, "We allowed the CO2 to build up a bit to conserve oxygen. It made us a bit lethargic and drowsy." By that point, the rescue mission was underway. Teams deployed from the US, Canada, and the UK, but there were a series of mishaps and setbacks which meant that Chapman and Mallinson remained roughly 3 days in what was, for all they knew, a watery grave.
It was very frightening because the chances of coming out of this was not going to happen.
Although they'd contacted the surface, Pisces 3's exact location was unclear. As it sank, the vessel lost its buoy, so locating it was the first major hurdle. According to author Stephen McGinty, who wrote the 2022 book The Dive, The Untold Story of the World's Deepest Submarine Rescue, Chapman sang and hoped sonar might pick up a signal. It worked, and the first major obstacle was out of the way, though the challenge was far from over. In 2021, McGinty told Newsweek, "The plan was relatively simple. A sister sub would go down with a two-man crew and attach a specially designed grapple hook to the sub, then lift it to the surface." As a series of subs attempted to attach lift lines to the Pisces 3, a number of things went wrong, until finally, 2 rescue hooks were attached and the Pisces 3 was slowly hoisted towards safety. But that process also proved challenging. In an agonizing succession of stops and starts, Mallinson and Chapman swung back and forth violently until they reached the surface. Chapman told BBC News that, "Rescuers thought we died when they looked at us. It had been so violent." By the time the two men re-emerged for fresh air, Chapman said they only had 12 minutes of oxygen left.